Hi, I'm Ann-Christine Diaz. I'm the Creativity Editor at Ad Age. Welcome to this edition of Virtual Pages. We're here to talk about experiential marketing, which is a very interesting topic right now because after the pandemic, we probably viewed it as something completely different, and now brands are pivoting and doing some very interesting things in this space. And today we're fortunate to have three pros in experiential marketing. We have Nick Adler, who's the SVP of Business Development at Cashmere. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
We also have Terra Fernandez, who's the Director of Content Partnerships at Canvas Worldwide.
Hi.
And we have James Hidden, who's the Managing Director of Ogilvy LA. And as I mentioned, these pros here have been doing tremendous things in the experiential space. So I wanted to kick it off first by having each of you talk about what is experiential. Prior to this, I feel like for me, basically, it's any opportunity for a brand to interact with a consumer in the real world. And that could be events, that could be just something small, like what James has done, which he may talk about. So how do you guys define it? Let's go with Nick.
Experiential, quick answer for me is something in real life, touch, feel, hear, all the senses can be derived in one place. It's something that we really engage with in the real world. Although I do think that definition is slightly changing now.
Okay, Terra?
I'm pretty aligned with Nick's definition. I think it also can have an impact, anything that, yes, engages all five senses, but maybe has, some cultural significance ideally, or, something that really stays with consumers.
Cool. And James, what about you?
Yeah, violent agreement there. I think the way we like to think about it at Ogilvy, we're not a traditional pure play experiential agency. So we kind of think about the whole brand, and what that means is thinking about experiences beyond pure play events, beyond just those classic definitions of experiential, and think about any sort of experience that creates a meaningful engagement with a consumer. And that's, I think, a huge opportunity to kind of broaden the definition of experiential. As you're saying, Ann-Christine, we're in a different world now. And so redefining what experiential is today is a massive challenge and opportunity.
Can you guys talk about maybe one of the biggest experiential projects that you had done prior to the pandemic happening, just so we have a sense of what you guys have accomplished in the recent past. So let's go back to Nick.
Yeah, so the last, I think, major experience that we worked on was for Jack in the Box at the Life is Beautiful musical festival in Las Vegas. It was a carnival festival within a festival. Beautiful experience, brought influencers, created a ball pit and games. And it was, I think, really visceral, great activation, and really engaged the consumers and attendees of the festival. Obviously, and I think we'll talk about this later, but, now that Life is Beautiful has been canceled this year, we have to look at that and evaluate how we create something in line with them again, but not in real life.
Terra, what about you guys?
I'd say probably the most recent experiential thing we worked on was the Genesis Invitational. So, obviously there's the golf element of the tournament, but also, bringing together influencers, partners, and, to really bring some of the off the course activations to life. So that's kind of the most recent. And then previously we've also done, from the boots up, we did a music festival for Hyundai called Camp Kona, where we toured to 3 cities and, did a bunch of custom activations there as well. But yeah, I'd say those are probably the biggest things we've worked on recently.
Okay, cool. And James, what about you?
Yeah, Ann-Christine, you and I were talking a little bit about a Glade campaign from a little while ago, and I think that's a really nice example of some work that maybe does get to broaden that definition of experiential. Project led out of our Chicago office, where we partnered with Walmart to deliver Glade scents in the packaging pillows and the bubble wrap that comes with Walmart deliveries. And perhaps, you know, a little while ago, we might have said that doesn't really feel like experiential, but to us, it's about, as I said, making that meaningful engagement and experience between brand and consumer in a kind of non-traditional way. And that platform, that campaign kind of feels, you know, before its time now, as we all live in that sort of virtual remote world. We now need to think about those kind of creative, non-traditional ways to create that real world interaction between brands and consumers. And so really proud of that Glade Walmart partnership in doing just that. And I think the second part of that we feel is really important is going beyond the experience itself, experiential plus, you might say, so that every experience we create isn't just about the people who receive the Glade samples in their packaging, but it's also the content that creates that broadens the reach of that idea, whether that's, you know, the earned media it generates or pure video content that comes out of it. We like to think about how we create a meaningful experience, but also extend that experience beyond the people who actually interacted with it themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting example that seems still doable at this time. So basically, those are the packing pillows that come in your Walmart packages full of Glade scent. So when consumers pop them open, they could sample. It was a sampler of the scent, which is really interesting. But what Nick and Terra, you guys were talking about are these experiential campaigns that require people to interact and be close to each other. So now that that's not possible, what are your clients asking you for now? Are they still going to you to create experiences, and how have you pivoted to address their needs? Let's go back to any of you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they're asking us to think about how we pivot now and how we can create these experiences, but virtually. Ultimately, it started with thinking about how we can be helpful for a brand around COVID, and you know, help these brands help consumers adjust to this world. And now, you know, we're thinking about how do we quickly activate, how do we do things that are that look nice. They don't have to be high production value, but they speak to the consumer. You know, what are the platforms we should use? How do we activate across social media, whether it's Instagram Live or Facebook Live or Twitch or whatever the case is. So we're looking at all these platforms and we're coming up with strategies for these companies to speak to them. How do we, you know, what influencers do we align with, and what creative stories can we tell virtually and fast?
Okay, yeah, I want to come back to you to get some specific examples of what you've done, but let's see how Terra and Nick have been, and James have been addressing this.
Yeah, you know, I think in the initial, you know, when everything first happened, like, you know, we had one brand that was supposed to participate in South by Southwest. And I think because it was so early, we were a little more reactive. So I think we're, you know, finally kind of reaching the phase where we're looking ahead and seeing where we can be a little more proactive in, you know, figuring out what experiential looks like for the future. Usually when we design programs, there's 360. So while an event and experiential is a big component of them, it's not the only component. Like usually there's, you know, social and linear and, you know, all these other like fun tentacles to a campaign. So what we've done, you know, in the initial phase is just really shift to some of those other components of the campaign. But yeah, you know, figuring out, you know, what this looks like moving forward has definitely been top of mind and something that we're working on.
Yeah. I'm Ann-Christine Diaz. Sorry. I just want to reintroduce all of you and myself for those who have just joined us. I'm Ann-Christine Diaz, the creativity editor at Ad Age. Welcome to our virtual pages. We're here to talk about experiential marketing and how that has shifted and been disrupted during the pandemic. And we have Nick Adler, the SVP of Business Development at Cashmere, Terra Fernandez, who's the Director of Content Partnerships at Canvas Worldwide, and James Hidden, who's the Managing Director at Ogilvy LA, who was about to speak to how his company has shifted and pivoted their approach to addressing clients' experiential needs right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Ann-Christine, and was going to really just agree with Terra there, that referencing kind of reactive and proactive. Absolutely, the world we're all living in right now. I feel like there was phase one was that kind of pivot phase where we all were reacting extremely quickly, long days, long nights, trying to support our clients' needs in a very quick turn, uncertain world. We did some lovely work out in New York for our TaskRabbit partners, helping kind of first responders and those in need in New York and other cities get access to services, to TaskRabbit, support, creating real world experiences, ultimately real world support for those first responders and those in need. And that was very much that first phase of kind of pivoting and reacting to the new world. And I think we're now seeing kind of phase two really coming kind of to the fore in terms of planning for the new normal. We're going to be in this world for a little while, it seems, and therefore, like you were saying earlier, in terms of things like South by Southwest, those types of real world mass experiences are not coming back anytime soon. And so how do we support our clients who might have been activating in those types of spaces, or our B2B clients where trade conferences are a huge part of their world? And so as an example, our health team and our innovation lab are doing a lot of work identifying the future of virtual trade conferences, Second Life-like experiences, clever skins and interfaces on top of Zoom technology or Zoom-like technology to create a sense of place, a sense of realness to what would otherwise be a very dry kind of video experience. So from phase one to phase two, I think we're in a different world now of planning for that new normal, and let's all hope that it's not the long-term normal.
I want to go back to some of those specific campaigns that you guys mentioned to get your sense of what worked well, what's not going to work as we move into that new normal that you're speaking about. But I just want to give some shout outs to some people out in the audience. There was Tony Andrews, Ingrid Almonte, Frank Moran, Jim McCabe, Brian Rucker, Lexi Torrero, Henrik Sword. Thanks for all joining us. And if any of you guys out there have any questions, just put a comment in any of our social channels. And so, yeah, I want to jump back into those specific examples that you mentioned. So Nick, you were speaking about your programs that you've been doing. Can you tell us what you learned, what worked, and is that going to still work, as we move into this next phase of marketing? And what did you learn from that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think one good example of the work that we've been doing quickly as we've shifted to this new reality is working with DoorDash to do virtual dinners with influencers and activists, people who are, who have audiences. And one of the things that DoorDash was doing is providing meals for every view that the influencer gets to the front lines, and through that they donated millions of meals. So with that we were able to do something meaningful, but also engage a wide audience, and we were able to do it in a way across really using the Instagram live platform, which obviously if you go on now you're seeing constant live discussion. Now while that worked early, because I think at the everybody was very engaged and they wanted to tune into these things, but now we're starting to see streaming fatigue. So ultimately, we now have to think about creative ways to enhance that experience and do that quickly. I want to continue to tell good stories, but we don't want to overthink production value, because what we've really learned, or what I think the consumer's adapting to, is that it doesn't have to be highly produced. I think it still has to look nice, and there's elements that I think are important. Obviously I'm in front of a very loud wallpaper, so we want to be able to tell those stories and do little things to enhance the experience. So that that's one quick thing. I mean, ultimately with a lot of our film and television clients, we were doing a lot of screening series, which were in real life experiences, bringing people in to see these films. So we're thinking quickly, how do we continue to do that? How do we work with the studios to enhance these films while they can't, go and actually show in public. So we're thinking creative ways and socially and platforms that we can do that.
Sorry, just to continue that, do you have a sense of if engagement with clients is actually getting better or worse through these new experiences that you're creating?
It's absolutely getting better. There's a ton of growth socially that through these experiences. Now, we have to continue to enhance that experience, or it will drop off. So I think it's important that we are creative about what we do. We're doing a lot of work right now around for the upcoming prom for Jack in the Box, and with that, that's about really engaging multiple schools across multiple platforms all at once. So it's important to us to continue to enhance the experience and look at what platforms we can really engage the consumer.
Oh, so James, you mentioned the TaskRabbit campaign. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How you got it off the ground, how you came up with it, and what worked, what didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, this was our New York team working in a matter of hours and days to build something out. But really, it's I think quite rightly, most of our clients responded proactively and through the lens of how can we help, what can we do to support people at this time. And I think they put their money where their mouth was and activated their service to allow people to volunteer to support those in need, whether it was going and doing grocery shopping for those who shouldn't or couldn't get out of the house, or other examples like that. And for us, that's about really living your purpose. Ultimately, I think we've all seen Nick reference kind of streaming fatigue quite rightly, and I think we're also seeing COVID advertising fatigue, where all everyone's ads on TV look pretty much the same. And I think our team and our clients and our partners at TaskRabbit wanted to take that one step further and really act rather than talk. And I think that's what's really critical as we think about the world we're in right now.
So Terra, what have you been doing so far for your clients?
Just hanging out now.
You were supposed to have that South by Southwest event. How have you shifted your approach for them since then?
Yeah, I think specifically, for Hyundai and Kia, they've had a more direct approach and, have directly donated money to help people on the front lines. So in terms of, what we're looking to do moving forward, we're still, planning ahead and, taking obviously the current environment into consideration as we do that. But yeah, we nothing I can talk about publicly yet, but we do have some things in the works. And really it's just been an adjustment to understanding, what things look like moving forward. And, it's been great to see some of the activations that have come forth, in this environment. I think some of the most successful ones are ones that have an interactivity component. So that's kind of just been interesting to observe, which, which people younger people who have grown up in a digital age are already used to, doing and interacting. So I think it's been more of an adjustment, for everyone else.
Okay. So you mentioned a bunch of things that have happened on different platforms. One comment that we have here from Ian on LinkedIn, he says, experiences are still happening. My 9-year-old has just told me all about the Travis Scott event in Fortnite. This is their normal. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. I tuned in. It was great. It was really good.
So tell us about that, and then also just tell us about what that shows us for the potential of working in this confined space in a way.
Yeah, I think Ann-Christine, that's spot on. And I think one of the exciting things about the world we're in right now is the creativity it inspires. I couldn't agree more with Ian's comment that there are a ton of experiences happening in new places, new environments, Fortnite being absolutely one of the perfect examples there. Our partners at David were able to work with Milka, their clients, to do a virtual Easter egg hunt in Fortnite last couple of weeks ago, obviously in a time where real world Easter egg hunts are happening less. And I think what we'll start to see is what new ideas, new types of experience actually become normal in a post-COVID world. And I think you're seeing some brands doing some really smart things in creating streaming experiences that add value to their consumer base, whether that's a brand like Fender doing guitar lessons or Nikon doing photography lessons. I think you'll start to see that become a much more kind of integral, ongoing part of marketing plans, even in a world where we can get back out in the real world and have live events. It's a really smart way to create that ongoing relationship and experience with your consumer. So I'm fascinated by the creativity that's happening right now and what will actually become mainstream and normal in the future too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I was going to say there's no question that experiences are happening, and that's kind of one of the big things is how do you stand out? I mean, yesterday you obviously had the Fortnite Travis Scott activation. Simultaneously, you had the NFL draft where the NFL did a huge activation with football players and celebrities, and then you also had a big hip hop concert out of New York with all these big hip hop well-known artists from the past and the present. So these are all amazing events. They're happening simultaneously. So you're competing now for eyeballs, and the Fortnite clearly is the winner. You take two behemoth brands like Travis Scott and Fortnite, you put them together. I think they had 12.3 million concurrent viewers, which is I think the largest they've ever had, and pretty huge numbers. So you have to now heighten your creativity to stand out. You have to really kind of step up your game. You can't just throw up the live and expect to win, unless maybe you're Drake.
So do you stand out? Everybody is coming out with these concerts and these fundraisers. So from what you see, the Travis Scott Fortnite example is a good one. What has made brands stand out at this moment in time during the pandemic? What's it got to take? If production values are still low, what's going to distinguish one brand from another?
I think, sorry, can you? Standing out, you got to move quick these days. I saw yesterday that Budweiser did an Instagram FaceTime discussion with Chris Bosh and a couple other athletes, and they recreated the "What's Up" commercial. Now, I mean, obviously, it's done a lot of times. It's been done multiple times in the past, but they were able to take something simple, a fun story, activate quickly, and utilize a great platform to do that. So that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think building on that, I mean, I think it's those brands that stay true to who they are, but do it in a breakthrough way. As we talk about, the number of digital activations going on right now, the streaming fatigue that Nick was referencing. How do you find ways that exciting, different, add value? Ann-Christine, you wrote about Yeti's streaming service the other day, and that's perfect. That's true to who they are, and adds a bit of value to someone's life when you're stuck on the sofa and not able to get back out into the great outdoors. And so I think it's those that really stay true to who they are, add value to a consumer's life, and ultimately create an experience that you couldn't have got elsewhere. I think some of the most interesting creativity, just to kind of keep going there, is happening in the travel sector right now, because people are not traveling. And how do you support a brand, and how do you invest in a brand that is seeing such drastic declines in usage? And some of the best examples, whether it's Airbnb pivoting to kind of digital experiences in different markets rather than obviously people being able to travel, even the Faroe Islands, creating an incredible sort of virtual gaming travel experience to drive interest and awareness of that as a tourism destination for when people do start to come back into the market, into the travel market in future. Staying top of mind, staying relevant, investing through a recession, through a pandemic is how brands will survive, will come out stronger. And doing that with a layer of creativity like Airbnb in the Faroe Islands is fantastic to see.
That Yeti experience that you were talking about is Yeti, the cooler company, for Earth Day. They basically sent photographers out into the wild to just record streams running for, I don't know for how long, and they put it up on this streaming channel just so people could get a taste of the outdoors while they're indoors. So we have a comment from Scott on Facebook. Oh wait, no, sorry, Lindsay on LinkedIn. Just continuing the nice work that we've seen in this space. What are your other favorite interactive activations so far? So Terra, what about you? What have you seen?
I've participated in a couple of cooking classes that I've liked, that have been, branded. So, those have been interesting. I like some of the dance parties that I've seen. Definite fatigue is real talk. But, it's nice to see, brands, brands that can benefit from this and, actively engage consumers. It's been, great to participate in some of those activities. I'm doing a digital beer festival, which should be interesting in a couple of weeks. So I'll let everyone know how that goes.
So are these companies, they send you the stuff and then you all cook together or drink together? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea. You get a package in the mail. So, that's like always, that's always exciting to get mail. But no, they send all the ingredients.
Disinfect it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, disinfect the package, bring it inside. And then you kind of logged into a Zoom and participated in a cooking class with a Michelin star chef. And you can ask questions. And it was nice that it just felt like a group experience, even though everyone was at home cooking in their own kitchen.
That's cool. I should try that. We have another question, a good question from Scott on Facebook. So what's your outlook on trade shows and how can you effectively replace the trade show experience virtually? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, we're digging into that right now. It's a very good question. The trade shows will ultimately come back, but we have to quickly adapt that to those new platforms to do it. So we're talking to a couple different gaming companies about E3. All these big conferences have now moved away, and I think it's on the brands now to host their own things. So I don't think there's going to be a place where multiple brands are going to engage as a traditional sort of trade show. But I think this is the moment for one brand to step up and own their own kind of announcements, and they have to do it in a creative way. Now, the question of how we do that is very interesting because, we're seeing a lot of different platforms, and I think whether it's Zoom or Twitch or whatever, you can't just always just speak to an audience. You have to figure out ways to engage. So we're trying to study what platforms or build those platforms that, can allow people to go one-on-one or 1 to 10 while there's a 1 to 50. So we have to figure out how to create these experiences without them being messy. At Cashmere, we're creating something called Nice Sweater, which is a division totally dedicated to focusing on virtual events and virtual experiences, and that's one of our major points that we want to tackle up front.
Was that in the works before this happened, or it was an idea?
No, well, it was in the works, but it really involved. Ultimately, it was a mix of live events as well. But with the moment and with the kind of the world we're in, we realize now we need to be special ops and really focus on the streaming services.
So you mentioned a number of platforms, and we've seen stuff on Twitch, Fortnite. So what's working for you? Can you talk about the merits of each platform? What's worked for specific events? And just so we have some tips, our audience has some tips on what's good for what.
Yeah, I mean, to go to your previous question tied to this, the one thing that I think has been great has been Levi's and their 501 DJ sessions or 501 artist sessions. I think they were really quick to react. And I think that they were one of the early brands to jump on the Instagram live platform and use it well. We work with them to work on a couple artists, one being Snoop. And it was very simple. At 501, an artist goes on and takes over that Instagram live page for the brand, for the Levi's brand, just messages it to their audience. And then they just, perform, DJ, whatever. It's been all different types of artists, from singers, songwriters to viral sensations like Doja Cat. And, not all of them have a huge audience, but it's the consistency of the messaging. And every day you see this beautiful design Instagram or static image that you see across social that says the 501 session is always black and white. It's really consistent. So I think as it slowly builds, people really learn about it and talk about it. So they may not have engaged with it on the stream, but they're aware of it. And I think it's really showed that Levi's has found a creative way to activate during this time, in an honest way, in an authentic way.
So with that one, it almost seems like both simplicity and consistency are key. That's a very simple idea. 501 live.
And authenticity, yes. Mm-hmm. I think those are three very important elements.
Okay, so what about you guys? What have you observed about the different platforms? What's worked for you? What seems promising?
Well, I was going to say, going back to the kind of trade show experience, for autos, like auto shows are very much an important element of, the car business. So I think, reimagining what that looks like moving forward will be an interesting task. But yeah, we've already seen some, virtual extensions of like what an auto show could be, but that's just been super top of mind for my clients.
Yeah, and the only final thing I'd build on your guys' comments there is I think there's an opportunity for agencies and for clients to collaborate really closely on how to use these platforms most effectively. We're like I was saying earlier, we've been experimenting with adding kind of skins and front doors to Zoom to create more of a sort of virtual experience with our innovation labs and our health practice, as well as partnering with some of those technology providers, Metra being one of them, to help them create a more rich and engaging, virtual trade conference like environment, Second Life style, video game style, so you can create a sense of place and a sense of world. I think what I'm intrigued by, and the Levi's example is a great one, Nick, is how we create a sense of reward or even VIP at times to our experiences. I feel like real world experiential was often about reaching a more influential early adopter audience and giving them something of value. And I think as we talked about phase 1, phase 2 earlier, phase 1 certainly feels right to open these things up as broadly as possible, give as many people as possible as much value as possible. But I think it'll be interesting to start to think about how you create opportunities for brands to reward their most loyal customers, to give priority experiences to advocates, and create kind of maybe a tiered model around experiential where there's value for certain higher value consumers in kind of unique and interesting ways.
That brings to mind one of my questions that I had planned to ask you. What is experiential going to look like when we get out of this? Or we have a question from Paul on LinkedIn. Are these programs going to last post-pandemic? But beyond continuing these programs, what about going back into the real world? What are brands going to have to be concerned about? We talked earlier about with virtual reality, when that was a huge thing, there was this concern about people getting pink eye from the headsets. But now it's not, the concern isn't pink eye, it's COVID-19. So tell me about how you're planning for the future when in-person experiential comes back.
I was going to say, I think it's hard from a digital perspective, just, reiterate James's point, to replace social currency with, when you can't go to events. But I think moving forward, I mean, safety and health are always a priority when you're doing an in-person event. So I think, moving forward, it's going to be less people. It's going to be figuring out sustainable single-use items in public spaces. I think we're going to need to have a ton of visual representation on how the event is addressing, sanitation and, visible hand sanitizer. And, I just think it's going to be a bigger priority and top of mind for everyone.
Yeah, to speak to the first part, I think that these digital experiences will 100% stay around. I think one of the things we've seen with the current climate is that we've been catapulted, 10 years into the future in terms of digital engagement, embracing technology. And I think a lot of us have seen this technology for a long time. It's been pitched to us. We've tested it, and you use it as a one-off, sometimes novelty experience. And now you realize the importance of these products, and you realize how some stuff that was so ahead is so on time right now. I mean, whether it is AR, augmented reality, or or streaming, or just getting people like my mom, who never really engaged with streaming, to now watch the Rolling Stones play online. So I think that no matter what, this stuff it's going to stick around. I don't know if we'll consume as much of it, but it will stick around.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the challenge that brings for all of us is what do real world experiential events look like in a world where we're probably not going to go back to quite the exact same level of physical interaction as we once did. I mean, this is a Lollapalooza poster up there. We're probably not going to see music festivals in the same vein for a year or two. And that then introduces a layer of, I think, thinking about ROI in an interesting way. If experiences are going to be smaller, if real world experiential is going to involve social distancing and proving you're healthy and all these kind of dystopian challenges, the number of people who physically interact with real world experiences with brands is going to be smaller than it once was. And that then forces us to think smartly about ROI, and kind of brings me back, I think, a little bit to that experiential plus point I was making, which it requires us to ensure that that we're thinking not just about the number of people at the physical event who interact with the brand in the real world, but how we create that ecosystem around the event that creates, virtual content, virtual ways of experiencing it, as well as real world, and media around it, influencer, social, whatever those ways of amplifying the experience to a broader audience might be. It will really provoke us to push the ROI question.
I have one more question from the audience. Robin, representing the arts world. Robin says, do you have any advice for arts organizations that depend on live performances? I think some of the examples we talked about here speak to that, but what about museums or concert halls? What are your suggestions for them?
Personally, I think it's just about being agile and moving quickly. I've seen a lot of good examples of museums creating online experiences, touring museums. I've seen a lot of, obviously, we work closely with musicians and influencers on that side. And for us, it's just about constantly having them engage with their audience. But again, it's about being creative in the storytelling. So, just streaming or just kind of like setting up a GoFundMe page won't work. You have to continue to evolve and come up with creative ways to do it. And I think a lot of it is about engaging with other people in the industry, doing things together, and co-creating things.
I think building off your GoFundMe point there, Nick, I think the layer I'd add there is the monetization angle that becomes interesting and challenging. I think, as you say, there's been some great virtual experiences created by people in the arts world, and how do you ensure people can get paid out of that? Is there partnerships with the platforms themselves to drive donations? We're seeing some smart innovation there in the charity space, and identifying that economic model. What is someone willing to pay for a museum experience or a concert experience that's on their sofa versus the real world experience? That becomes an intriguing long-term challenge, I think.
Yeah, actually, great point. I will say one more thing to that. One thing that, and again, I think a lot of it is working with music, but I thought the Versus DJ battle experiences that it was created, I think, or pioneered by Swiss Beats and Timbaland, where artists are playing their music against each other through Instagram and through other. It's also played on their website, but Instagram Lives where it's getting the most engagement. And we saw with Teddy Riley and Babyface that had 500,000. Concurrent views. So ultimately, I think that's amazing, but for them to take that and figure out potentially how to monetize that, or for these artists who are really engaging, how do they figure out how to trigger some actual some paywalls? That is a big question. And I think I can't wait to see what people pay for in this environment. I think they are already paying for some stuff.
So my final question, Nick, you mentioned that you're moving forward with this one area of business that has a lot of potential right now, given the circumstances. What are the rest of you doing at your respective businesses to steel yourself for the future in case something like this happens, or also just to steel yourself now, given, clients' reservations about doing experiential things? James, do you have any?
Sorry, didn't want to jump in there. I mean, we, as I mentioned right up front, we're in some regards lucky as a truly integrated agency that we're not reliant on one revenue stream only, and so we're thinking really about how we support our clients' business needs in a kind of channel agnostic way, and so that means in many regards we're pivoting, plenty of different examples from planning big budget TV shoots that now can't happen to how do we think about a more scrappy, clever way to produce content, and that's the same for experiential too. Clearly, like I said a little bit earlier, we do believe that the brands that come out of this the strongest will be the ones that continue to support their brands through these challenging times. The data, from previous recessions proves that out. So we're trying to find creative ways to support our clients' businesses, to future-proof them and weather this storm. And I think most excitingly, as we've all talked about today, these new technologies, new platforms, new ways of creating engagement and experiences for consumers, creativity will win out, and that's what's most exciting about the time we're in right now is the race to find the ways to creatively solve business problems in a time of constraint, and that's what we're focused on, supporting our clients and finding creative ways to do that.
I think we're almost out of time, but I want to give Terra a chance to respond if you have something.
Yeah. I mean, the Canvas motto has always been make yourself uncomfortable. So I think, in the spirit of that, challenging, ourselves and our clients to, look ahead, how you steel yourself, I think is just, you keep moving forward, and, people are adaptable. So, just keep moving on, I guess.
Well, thank you all so much, Nick, Terra, and James. And thank you to our audience who joined us today. And until the next virtual pages, have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. Bye.